Welcome back to another video. Today I wanted to talk about a massive market trend that I've been noticing that has far-reaching implications for the entire motorcycle industry, and that is China and its place in the motorcycle industry is poised to make a big effort to take over the motorcycle industry. So let's talk about it.
Start it up.
This is a potentially very inflammatory topic. It gets people's emotions up. What I wanted to highlight first and foremost is that I'm talking about objective observations of the motorcycle industry itself, nothing more and nothing less. There's been a trend that I've been noticing over the last couple of years, and I think it is gaining momentum, and that's China's place within the motorcycle industry. We've seen lots of fantastic bikes, particularly this year, which has really changed the narrative around Chinese motorcycles, particularly CF Moto's 450 MT, their concept bike, the MTX, which looks very high-end. Then you've got Kove with their 450 Rally, which is really making waves in the dual sport world, as well as their 800X Rally adventure bike, which is claiming to be very light, and a whole host of others like Benelli's BKX 300, Beta's Alp 4.0s look interesting as well. So there were a lot of interesting motorcycles coming out of China that no longer looked completely cheap and nasty. Now, I'm not saying they're up to Western standards yet, but this was one of the first times where I really sat back and I thought, wow, they're really making bikes that are almost on parity to the international motorcycle market like Japan and Europe and America. And it was interesting to witness in real time because I'm not the only one that thought that. What I saw happen over the last few weeks is a narrative shift, particularly and anecdotally in the comment section and in forums. No longer with 99% of people poo-pooing Chinese motorcycles. Now I'm seeing a shift where I'm seeing a larger demographic of people now saying, you know what? They're offering features, performance, and value for money that the other bikes at the shows from the bigger manufacturers from Japan and Europe are just not offering. So that is a very strong argument for people to start jumping ship and buying a bike that is actually made for them. This is frequently something that is witnessed in the business cycles of any market. You get a usurper like Japan in post-World War II, where they took over from the British, offering bikes that had better performance, better reliability, and were also more affordable than the UK efforts. But they didn't get there immediately. Of course, they had a decade or two of bikes where people really didn't like because of the reliability issues. They couldn't match the performance and they just looked a little bit weird. It took some time for Japan to gather momentum. Their crown jewel, of course, signifying their takeover of the market, I think would have been the Honda CB750. That was a moment where the motorcycle world realized Japan was here and here to stay, and they were now the top dog. I'm not saying China's there yet, but I'm saying that this year probably was the year that signified to me, you know what, they could actually pull this off. This was the first year where I saw bikes that, hey, they're really bikes that people are going to want and are not being offered by other manufacturers. China have clearly paid attention to the market and noticed some niches, particularly in the small displacement, lightweight adventure and dual sport category, which has been neglected for a very long time from most manufacturers. And I think it's a very interesting move and a great idea for getting market share. That's how you always do it as a smaller business. You can move faster, you can identify trends quicker because you tend to have your finger on the pulse, less people in the decision-making process, so you can really jump on these trends very quickly, and this is what we're seeing. I think if you're really looking forward to affordable bikes with great value and features and performance that you want, and the Japanese and the Europeans aren't answering that call, I think China might have the answer, if not now, very soon for a lot of people. It's a very interesting thing to witness, and as I stated, the narrative has started to switch positive because of that fact. If you offer people enough value with the features and performance they want, it will surpass negative sentiment. We have Japan as that golden example. If you think sentiment against China is bad or your opinions are as negative as they could possibly get, you just have to look back towards Japan. People were not happy with Japan post World War II. And there's 4 key things that China need to get right in order to capture a decent market share. And I think they're about to do it. And that's performance, features, value for money, and reliability. If they can get those 4 things, then I think they will really start to carve out a bigger and bigger slice of the pie. And I see that happening now. They're making leaps and bounds in quality. It used to be, don't touch this, don't touch that. It broke on me within X amount of time. Now people are coming back to me saying, hey, this is actually a really reliable motorcycle and I would be happy to get another one. So again, that sentiment shift, but it's also anecdotally reinforcing that that quality is improving. The eye test for me was the biggest shock because I was looking at motorcycles that if I wasn't a motorcycle guy and no one told me they were Chinese, I wouldn't have been able to tell. And that shocked me because usually you can pick a Chinese motorcycle out of a lineup 9 times out of 10 because they really have some strange design language over there. Not the case this year, and I think that was one of the things that made me really sit up and go, hey, things might be changing in the motorcycle industry. But it was more than that, it was the feature set as well. We're getting features that we're not seeing from Japan or from Europe. I will hone in on the 450 MT, for example. With that 270-degree crank 450 motor, that's something that you don't typically see in the small displacement adventure bike market. You generally have to spend your way up into the middleweight category to get that kind of bike. And here's China offering it out of the small displacement value-orientated side of the market. Now, some of you could say, look, it's just a motor and it doesn't really matter the sound of the bike and where it makes its power. But to me, as a die-hard petrol head, the sound of a motor absolutely matters to my enjoyment levels. I'm not gonna lie, you might call that superficial, but other little things like the tubeless spoke wheels, that's stuff that we want to see in the small displacement market that a lot of manufacturers do not do because it's either too expensive for them or they don't think it's needed and cannot be bothered. That was another thing that made me sit up and say, hey, they're actually paying attention to what people want, which means they're really focused in on making bikes that people really, really want to see, which is important because that's what you want manufacturers to do. And I think it's where frustration is building up with Japan and with Europe, with America, where they're just not listening to the customers. We're seeing bikes that are now similar weights to the competition in their respective capacities, as well as engine performance with power characteristics not being too far off the Chinese engines and the motorcycle as a whole, whether it's suspension, weight, engine performance, they're starting to get close to parity with the rest of the industry. And we know the value for money is going to be there. That's China's wheelhouse, making stuff that people can afford. So we've got those all important 4 major things going on at the same time. And this really could have big implications for the market and completely shake up the industry. Because if China does start making bikes that people really, really want and everyone starts jumping ship where the value, features and performance all lie, then that is really going to make either the established manufacturers sit up and take notice and offer competition, which is just going to create this whole new golden era of motorcycles that we really want to see, which I would absolutely love to see, or they're going to put the nail in the coffin to these manufacturers if they refuse to change with the times, with the features, performance and value for money that they need. But it isn't all rainbows and lollipops. Just because I've noticed those market trends doesn't mean that China are going to be able to move into the Western market in a big way and that we're automatically all going to jump ship. That's not necessarily the case. There's still a lot of hurdles to get over. While the quality is improving, there's still many manufacturers pumping out absolute turds over there. That probably isn't going to change, so you're really going to need to pay attention to the individual manufacturers like you would in the Western market anyway, because not every motorcycle manufacturer is equal at the end of the day. You've got things like dealer support. Are you going to have a dealer close by, or are you going to have to do a very long commute to get there? That's going to be a real pain. How hard is it going to be to get hold of parts? Resale value, this is a big one. Often people don't think about that when they're purchasing a bike. I completely understand the argument of some people don't care, others absolutely live by it. But generally speaking, if you buy a Chinese motorcycle, it's basically worth nothing by the time you're done with it, because they are a little bit of a gamble already buying one because of those long-standing quality issues. Then second hand is even more of a worry, because then you've got a previous owner as well. Have they looked after it? Is it poor quality and they've just kept it on its last legs and are shipping it off? So resale value is a big issue and something to pay attention to. How much is your Chinese motorcycle going to be worth when you move it on to the next person? This is often the curse of the early adopter. So it's not a perfect world for these Chinese manufacturers. I think there's a long way to go before they make a motorcycle better than what Japan is pumping out and better than what Europe is pumping out. But what I'm saying is this year was the first time that I thought, you know what, it's actually possible that they might make it to the top of the mountain, that we might see a motorcycle better than the competition come out of China. And I haven't thought that ever before. This could really be a large scale shift in where we see the motorcycles we want coming from in the motorcycle industry. I'm not saying it's a good or a bad thing. I'm going to leave that up to you to decide. I'm just saying that this is a trend I'm noticing, and this is going to have far-reaching implications moving forward. I'd love to know your thoughts, so chuck them down below. And as always, don't forget to stay shiny side up.